So a few years ago I bought this little sketchbook which is laid out in such a way that you can do a sketch every day for a year, and that was my plan. I only actually managed to do 6 months, not a whole year, and I kind of did it like a visual diary. So each day I tried to do something kind of connected with what had happened that day. Some of the sketches are very literal, some are a little bit more, some need a little bit of explaining to show how my brain works. So because I started doing these sketches before I'd ever even thought about doing videos on YouTube, there are some things in here which are part of my day-to-day life which I wouldn't otherwise have chosen to share on YouTube. So for example, there are some things in here that are relevant to the job that I was doing at the time. I will only mention as much as is relevant to make sense of the sketch. And as I said, I did 6 months of sketches, so my current plan is to just focus on 1 month at a time. So you'll have a series of 6 videos covering this book, or rather covering half of this book, because it was supposed to be for a year. Okay, so let's have a look at what I did in the first month of my daily sketches. So here we've got the very first sketch, which is Tom, the shepherd's hut that I stayed in just for a couple of days. And this was the first time I'd stayed in this place, but I have actually stayed there again since. And you may have seen in other videos this painting that I did of Tom. It's the same shepherd's hut, but it had been revamped by the time I stayed there the second time. So some of the colouring is different. And also in that general area, I did this sketch of the tithe barn and granary. And if you're wondering why I'm showing you this when I'm supposed to be showing you this, it's because the granary is actually now a shop, and it's that shop where I bought this book. So there's that connection. So yeah, I believe this is probably the same day that I bought the book. And then the following day I was going to a class at a place called the Glass Hub, where they do different glass blowing and other glass technique classes. So I was going for the lampwork bead course, which I had done one there several years prior to that, but I was going for a refresher really. And then I had these ideas of beads that I'd like to make, which were inspired by the interior and the exterior of Tom, the shepherd's hut. So we had the green background with the sunflowers, which was on the side of the hut, and then there was some sort of like red and green elements to reflect the sort of main colours of it. And this idea of having the scalloped edge, which reflected the scalloped edge on the front, and then this one was a lighter green in a heart shape, which was sort of inspired by the cupboard handles inside the hut. Now, as it turned out, I didn't make anything like this on the actual course, not at that point anyway. And then the next day I was back home, and I was just had a very lazy day because I was exhausted from the from the glass bead making class the day before. And then we've got this one, which you could debate isn't even a sketch, it's just text. And the language that this is written in is Nepali, which I've been learning on and off for a really long time. And this actually says Nepali. So that was when I went to a Nepali language meeting. Okay, and then this is one of my work days, and part of my task that day was removing Ivy, that was growing through the family's fence that I worked for. This one, I've got a note here that I didn't actually draw it until 11 p.m. and the significance of that is because I was waiting in all day for a delivery, and that was the beads that I'd made on the course. You can't take them home the same day because they have to be cooled slowly overnight in the kiln, and then they post them to you. So I was expecting to receive them this day and I didn't. So instead I just drew an imaginary parcel and then the next day they did actually arrive. So this was a string of just the general beads that I'd made on the day, and then this was my favourite one, which I've since put onto a necklace. My little piggy bank is kind of symbolic. This day I paid a check in to the bank, so that's the purpose of the piggy bank, is it's just representative of the bank. And then we've got a little chihuahua. So the family that I was working for had 2 chihuahuas. So this isn't one of theirs, this is just done from a photo that I found online. But again, it was obviously a day when I'd been at work, and presumably, I don't remember exactly, but presumably I'd had quite a lot of interaction with the dogs on this day. This one I've labelled as Sofa Saturday. So that was obviously a very lazy day. So lazy, in fact, that I didn't even get up to draw my own sofa, because this is not my sofa. This is one which I've done a picture from Google. Then the next day we've got these 2 teddy bears, which are kind of symbolic of friendship. And I went with a group of friends to one of our houses, and we had a really, really fun evening, and I just laughed so much. I was crying and couldn't breathe. I can't remember a time when I've laughed so much. It was such a lovely evening. And then the next day, this is a cooked breakfast which I'd had for lunch at one of our local supermarkets, where they've got their own little cafe in the shop. And then this was another work day. On this occasion I'd taken the family's car to a garage to have some work done, and one of the family members gave me this little cute cat toy which looks like my cat, and because my cat's name is Coke, as in Coca-Cola, I called the little toy cat Diet Coke. So I mentioned back here that I'd had this idea to do some beads inspired by the shepherd's hut that I stayed in, and then this is the day when I actually made the beads. As you see, the colours are similar to what I had planned, but the actual design in places is a little bit different. This day, I don't know what else I did on this day, but I filled my car up with petrol. This is not my car. So this is similar to a classic car that I used to own and that my dad had owned as well. But I decided to just do this old-fashioned petrol station with an old car rather than drawing my current car in a modern petrol station. These 2 days kind of go together. I was just doing research and preparation of ideas of things that I could do with my glass beads, tools that I could perhaps buy, just preparation that I could do. This old radio is in symbol of some work that I did for an online radio station, just doing basically like admin stuff in the background. I wasn't on air. Do you know Emperor Roscoe? Depending on your age and where you live, you may remember Emperor Roscoe. He was really, really big in the 60s and 70s on like Radio Caroline and when Radio 1 first started. But he's still going, he still does radio shows every week, and I send information to him every week that he uses in his shows. So that's my little claim to fame. If you don't know who he is, that won't mean anything. If you do know who he is, maybe you might be a little bit impressed that I know him and that I'm in regular contact with him. And then this one was just a new candle that I'd bought. It was in this kind of like boat shape, and instead of a normal wick it had like wooden wicks, so when it's burning it just makes this lovely crackly sound like a log fire. I was not happy with the drawing though, and I've made a note here that I need to practice drawing glass and reflections. I haven't, by the way. Here we've got some more glass beads. So this little row of beads here, this was where I was practicing with using acid on the glass beads. So if you leave the beads as they are, obviously they're very shiny, but if you dip them in acid it just takes that shine off. And there's different ways you can do it, so you can be selective about which bits you coat in acid. So that was that experiment. I'd put a little glass ball on the end of a pin, and I'd made some beads for a friend of mine who loves poppies. This is a picture of my cat Coke, and this wasn't from this particular day. This was copied from a photo that I'd taken some months previous to this. But this was the day when we went to the vets to get his booster vaccination, and also he had an eye problem at the time, so he was getting his eyes checked too. Back to the glass beads again. This was my setup in the garage, my little desk, and I made this little wooden tray to kind of separate the different colours of glass that I'd got. And then the next day, according to this, I spent 5 hours in the garage organising my tools and other bits and pieces. This day I made some gift bags, and I actually used pages from a book that I had, which had loads of glossy photos of different views around Britain. And then this terrible sketch was I took one of the family members from my work to visit somebody in a care home, and then this was just in the lounge in the care home because I was obviously just sat waiting. But it's a terrible sketch. The perspective is, oh, it's so bad. And then this one again was related to work, where we'd driven to Bath, I don't even remember why, and got lost. Obviously I didn't draw this while I was driving around in Bath. I must have looked up some pictures online after I got home, but again, very, very wonky. So these two particularly bad sketches, but you know. And then I bought a slow cooker for 99p. And this is, if you've seen my glass bead making videos, this is where I put the hot beads so that they just cool down really slowly so that they don't crack. And then our last 2 days for this video, this one is a Thomas Edison light bulb. And the reason I've drawn that is because my dad actually came and did some work on the lights in my garage. Now the lights in my garage are just boring fluorescent tubes, so I didn't want to draw that. But it was about lights, so that's why I decided to draw this Thomas Edison light bulb, and I actually really quite like that sketch. And then the last one, with this rubbish bin and a bag of rubbish. I've not got a rubbish bin like this, but this was a day when I took a load of rubbish to the local rubbish tip, so that's a nice way to end the video, isn't it, talking about rubbish. And you get a little quick preview of the first 2 days of the next month. So I hope you enjoyed that little glimpse into my life. not hugely exciting. Thanks for watching. I will see you again next time for the second month of sketches. Thanks.